What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is part of a series where I focus on Academy Award Best Picture nominees from a certain year. Done such years in the past, such as 2000 all the way to 2018. You clicked on this video, you know it. This time around, I'm focusing on the 2019 Academy Award Best Picture nominees and ranking them from worst to best. Now, here's the thing, a little bit of history. From the 1940s to 2008, it was always 5 Best Picture nominees. But what happened was 2009 onwards, they had it where there was the possibility of up to 10 Best Picture nominees. And some of the years had like a weird kind of number, like 8 or 9 because of the preferential voting. Although you'll see, like, I believe it was like 2021 and 2022, they were like, you know what, we're going to actually fill in all 10 slots, which is what I think you should do, because it's like, if you have the possibility of 10 slots, why not fill all 10? So, but anyways, I digress. For the year of 2019, there was the weird number of 9 Best Picture nominees. So I'll be ranking them from 9 being the worst to 1 being the best, and of course, my humble opinion. But anyways, guys, I'll be curious to hear your guys' ranking down below. But anyways, enough exposition. Let's get started. So kicking this off, number 9, we have Little Women. Little Women, I thought, was a rock-solid film. I did give it a second chance. Like, I saw it in theaters, then I gave it a second viewing when I bought it on Blu-ray. But when I saw it a second time, I still kind of thought that it was just solid, which isn't a bad thing. It's definitely a film that I can appreciate, but I really wasn't a big fan of the pacing. That was something that I struggled with mightily, and I also just don't really see much rewatchability value, so I ended up selling the Blu-ray. It's a film that I respect. I will say it's kind of a come down. Like, I loved Lady Bird, but I felt that Little Women was something where I was like, it's solid, but I mean, at the same time, like, you know, I didn't really get too much from it. The cinematography, I did like the, symbolic nature of it, especially with how it utilized, color grading. I thought that was really effective. But overall, it's a film that I can't really see myself revisiting. But at the same time, I respect it, and I can definitely see why others might like it. But yeah, Little Women, it's my number 9. Next up, my number 8 is Jojo Rabbit. This is a solid film. It is funny, it's quirky, it's dramatic when need be, but it's for me a very lightweight movie, which isn't a bad thing per se. I liked it a little bit better than Little Women because I do feel like there are some memorable elements in it for sure, but there's also some elements that kind of make it hold back, for me at least, with wanting to revisit it, because I do think that the second half isn't quite as strong as that first act. That's just me personally. I mean, maybe there's other people out there that really dug the movie as a whole. But for me, I just wasn't able to really say, like, oh, yeah, like, as a whole, it worked 100%. It's a solid film, very well acted, it's comedic when need be, and I can see why a lot of people love this film. I personally just thought it was solid, and that's okay, though, because, again, I still liked it. But yeah, it's my number 8. Next up, my number 7. My number 7 onwards, I own all these on Blu-ray or 4K. But number 7 is Ford v Ferrari. Look, this is a film that feels kind of traditional, because it is like a sports biopic. But I gotta say, this is a really, really good film. It's 2.5 hours, but man, the pacing is really, really good. It feels very tight. The editing is really good. It's very well acted. Christian Bale and Matt Damon are incredible together. Love the way it's shot. The visual effects feel really, really strong, especially with how they're utilized for background shots. It's a mid-budget film. It came out pre-pandemic, so it was actually a hit. As many of you probably know, these days we unfortunately don't really get too many mid-budget movies, which is a shame because it's a mid-budget film and it did really well. There's a lot to appreciate in this film. I can definitely see why so many people dug this film. Obviously, I own it on Blu-ray, 4K I should say. So I did see it a second time and I liked it as much, if not a little bit more, than I saw it the first time in theaters. And I definitely will be revisiting it. It's one of the reasons why I own it on 4K. And yeah, that's why it's my number 7. Next up, my number 6. This is going to anger a lot of people because I know a lot of people will probably have it higher up. But my number 6 is Joker. A very, 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 very flawed film. In fact, each time I watch it, my rating goes down much more. I'm not going to lie. That's just how it is. But at the same time, there's no denying that it's a film that the filmmaking is quite strong. I think that Joaquin Phoenix's performance, man, is just really incredible. Hilduer's score is also something that I love. The score I just always play back in my head from time to time. I also do think that it's interesting how with each passing viewing, I always say to myself, with each passing viewing, oh yeah, so there actually isn't that much in this film that actually happened. At least that's the vibe I get and the interpretation I get with each passing viewing. The first time you watch it, you take everything literally, and then upon multiple viewings, it's kind of oh, maybe this didn't happen, maybe this didn't happen. It makes for an interesting viewing. But like I said, it does have rewatchability value, but it just, I feel like more and more rewatching of this film, it kind of makes me settle on like a lesser rating, and that's fine. Like again, I still come back to this film quite a bit, but I feel like the hype maybe kind of come down. Like once that was gone and everything, I was actually able to think about and marinate on this film. I was able to like think about how it's like it's a solid film. It's not amazing, but it is definitely a well acted film, and it's yeah, it's really well done. Looks incredible on 4K. If you don't own this on physical media, would highly recommend you pick it up on 4K. And yeah, that is my number 6. Next up, my number 5 is 1917, the film that is made to look like it's all in one take, but obviously it's not. This is a film that is quite thrilling. Holy cow. You really do feel as though you're in the perspective of the two lead characters, and their journey is really something. Love Thomas Newman's score, love the cinematography, all those long takes, the camera sweeps. It's a really, really well done film. I do think that there are some things that kind of hold this film back. I think for one, despite you caring about the characters, it is kind of lightweight itself, the actual character development. And everyone surrounding those characters are just kind of like, just almost like fodder to get from point A to B, where it's like, oh, you need to go to this. Like, it almost kind of feels like a video game. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that there are some elements that do kind of hold it back from it being like a near masterpiece. But it is still a really well done film. Not my favorite Sam Mendes film, not even close, but it is still a good film, and I would definitely recommend you check it out. Especially on 4K. It looks incredible on 4K. But yeah, it's my number 5. Next up, my number 4 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Quentin Tarantino's latest film is a film that feels like Boogie Nights meets Big Lebowski. It's a really interesting blend of movies. Killer Joe, I would also say there's like a little bit in of this film, but my goodness, it feels very, very detail oriented, like, with capturing the time period. It's very funny. There's a lot of scenes that I just find myself cracking up at. It's got a killer third act that is just like, it's what cinema's all about, man. I loved the performance by Brad Pitt. I also really like Margot Robbie, DiCaprio. Everyone is firing on all cylinders. There's a reason why this film got as much Oscar attention as it did. It's very well deserving. And yeah, that's why it's my number 4. Next up, my number 3, a very, very sad film, but holy cow, it is a great film. My number 3 is Marriage Story. I really, really like this film. I think that it's one of those films that just, each viewing just gets more and more out from me. Like, every time I watch it, I'm just like, man, like, I'm picking up on all these, like, details and everything. But it's also just a tour de force in terms of acting. Like, I loved Adam Driver's performance, and Scarlett Johansson also did an incredible job. When they have scenes together, those are in particular the standouts for me. I think it's a film that, yes, it is an acting showcase, but the directing is also quite strong. And I do think the directing does say a lot in terms of, getting the characters from point A to B in a way that does feel very like fly on the wall, but also at the same time very naturalistic as well. So I would highly urge people to check out Marriage Story. For some, it might be difficult to watch though, because again, it is dealing with divorce. But it is a film that I do find to be a necessity and at least should be watched once, if not many more times, to appreciate it fully. But yeah, Marriage Story is my number 3. Next up, my number 2 is The Irishman. Absolutely love this film. This is one of my favorite Scorsese films. I loved seeing it. Kind of wish that I saw this in theaters, but of course at the time, well, actually I shouldn't say at the time, they still have it where Regal and AMC have it where they don't show Netflix films, unfortunately, and this happened to be a Netflix film because other studios didn't want to give Scorsese $200 million, which is a shame because after watching The Irishman, you're like, holy cow, Scorsese still knows how to direct great films. I mean, shouldn't be a shock because he's very consistent. But The Irishman is a film that I loved how it took the elements of Once Upon a Time in America, which came out in '84, and how it utilized Scorsese in particular in his directing, how he wanted to take basically that structure of Once Upon a Time in America and make it his own, because Scorsese is best known for doing gangster films, so it's basically him kind of retrospectively looking at all of his gangster films and then critiquing them, and at the same time having it where these characters in The Irishman, they face consequences. They have accountability, and not in your usual sense where it's like, oh, like, they did this something bad and then at the very end they like die. Like in like a very brutal way. Not in like that way. It's a very subtle way. And especially the ending, I think that The ending is what really hits home the message, and I think that it is an incredible ending. One of my favorites for sure of the 2010s. And yeah, I love The Irishman. I also think that the length I will definitely defend because I didn't find this film to be slow at all. I was riveted for 3.5 hours. And yeah, I would highly recommend The Irishman, and that is why it is my number 2. Now, any other year, The Irishman would have been my, choice for Best Picture, and I would have said that it is probably my favorite, film from that year. But here's the thing. There's a film that came out called Parasite, which is my number 1. Parasite is an incredible film. It is a masterpiece. It is a masterclass in directing, editing. Really does a great job in terms of handling themes and messages, blending genres in a seamless way. It's also a film that, because of it blending so many different genres, there is something for everyone, which I definitely respect and appreciate because I feel like that's part of the reason why this film was so successful with audiences and critics alike. Not gonna lie, I originally thought that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was going to win Best Picture, but a couple days before the Oscars, I said to myself, you know what? I have a gut feeling that Parasite's going to win. So I put that down on my ballot. And so, of course, I was very happy when Parasite actually did win. It was still a shock, a welcoming shock, I might add. I mean, this is a film that really surprised at the Oscars. I feel like most people, including myself, up until a couple days before the Oscars, were kind of like, it might just win International Feature. And then it ended up winning 4, rightfully so. But yeah, Parasite, if you haven't seen it already, highly, highly recommend this film. It is one of the best of the 2010s. And yeah, that is why it's my number 1. But yeah, guys, that is my ranking of all the 2019 Academy Award Best Picture nominees. I want to hear your ranking for the 2019 Best Picture nominees down below. And guys, as always, thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate it for the subscription, notification bell, follow me down Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.